Hi, everybody. This is LexLin Consulting. Talking about disaster recovery exercises. I know a lot of us turn to forget about the importance of disaster recovery, and we only realize how important it is until we're in a scenario where we have to utilize our disaster recovery exercise. So, a couple of things I'm going to run through is just the basics of disaster recovery, what you need to know, what you need to have in order to have a successful disaster recovery exercise, and furthermore, what you need to have in place to prepare for that disaster. Chances are the disaster will never happen, but you know what? It's better to be prepared than not to be when the event happens. All right, so let's go through our setup here. What is a DR? DR, in a nutshell, is ensuring continuous business, continuous operations in the event of an emergency following the CIA triad, which stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability, is essentially ensuring those three exist and those three um, qualities are maintained in a disaster. So, disaster recovery involves policies, it involves tools, it involves procedures, and obviously it enables the business to recover from critical technology emergency and ensure continuity, which we all agree that's important. So, examples of DR, let's get into it. Examples of DR, there's two main ones. One is human caused, and the other one is a natural disaster. So, say for instance, a human caused disaster would be errors by an engineer who mistypes something that blows up the database and deletes everything. Uh, Breaches, cyber attacks from outsiders who have a nefarious intent on your data. Get a hold of your data and delete it or hold it hostage, like a ransomware attack. Sabotage, it could be individuals that work for the organization and they get fired and they're disgruntled, so they decide to delete all the PII and PHI in your network. So those are the examples of DR situations. What things do you need to be prepared for a DR? One of the things that you need to obviously is have your emergency contact list, have your external contact list. So, say for instance, I'm working for a healthcare company and um, uh, there's a disaster recovery situation. So, the things we have to think of is who finds that out first and who communicates that out to the internal company and who communicates that to the external uh, uh, clients or vendors. And so you have to have those in place. Make sure you have your emergency contact. Some companies that we have helped establish the DR, we've had to go in there and say, okay, you need your CTO, you need your security officer, you need your the VP of IT, you need the project manager, you need uh, the manager of the developers, manager of the database team, manager of the server team, manager of the network team. And then, of course, having your external contacts information. So if you're running Office 365 and there's some important data there, if it got compromised, you would have to make sure you have your contact information for your vendors who you're supporting, or the vendors that whose service you're using. So if you have a Cisco device, it got compromised. Guess what? You need to have your Cisco um, support information and have the the RMA information if you need to replace a device. Then, of course, we have to have our DR teams, which are already alluded to. Have the DR teams in place and know what they're responsible for. So, if you have the network team. In the event of a fire, FortiGate firewall or Cisco firewall getting compromised, okay, do I have the primary contact in my team who would spearhead the activities to recover from that? The server team, server gets compromised, my Linux server, make sure you have his contact information, cell phone. Make sure you have email. Make sure you have the ability to, and not only that, have their contact information, and they have to know their responsibilities. What am I supposed to do in a DR situation? Where my backups are? Which vendor would I contact to ensure my DR is complete? Is completely recovered. Database team, if you're dealing with SQL Server, who would I contact in the SQL department to get recovery from the databases? Then obviously, who would verify this information? And then of course, one of the most important things that you discuss in a DR are your RPO and RTO activities. So RPO stands for Recovery Point Objective, which means how much data, and this is measured in time, can be lost after recovery from a disaster failure without with in such an acceptable um, situation, and ensure that my organization is still functional after that loss. So, say for instance, you're running a database that is constantly being written to, um, 24/7, 365, and each piece of data that's written to that database is critical. So, I would say your recovery point objective, which is measured in time, would probably be under an hour. Like you losing an hour of that data being written to your database, that will cause catastrophic um, implications to your business. So that's an example. But if you have a business where users only write to the data during working hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, your RPO might not be as bad as somebody whose database is being written to all the time. Because guess what? You lose an hour, maybe during that hour, not much data was being written to. And then the RTO, which is recovery time objective. This is the duration of time uh, and the service level within which a business process must be restored after a disaster, in order to avoid unacceptable consequences associated with being in a disaster recovery situation. So, say for instance, okay, my server went down because there was a hurricane and my data center lost power. Now, how much time from the time the power got lost to the time it got recovered can you afford without having a negative implication to the business? And that's what RTO is. So you have to measure and say, okay, and some of the things are circumstantial. Okay, it's on the weekend, nobody's working, so nobody's writing information to the database, or nobody's accessing our website. So if the chances of a client trying to access our website on the weekend are very unlikely, they're very low. So if it went down on the weekend, that wouldn't be a problem. I'm okay with it being down 4 hours. If it went down during working hours, my clients are constantly accessing my website so that they can do their business. How much time can I afford to be down without my clients saying, okay, I'm losing money because your services are down? So that's the RTO. So these are some of the things that, and obviously when you get into DR, you got to think of best practices. Make sure that you're practicing these with your DR team, reminding yourselves of verifying backups. Some people back up their entire databases and never have a chance to verify that their backups can be easily recovered. What do you have in place? So if you're preparing for a DR, make sure what do you have in place to support my DR. So backups obviously are important, recovering from that. Maybe having a DR site where I can bring up uh, a data center. Maybe it might mean having a backup server that in the event one died, I could bring up this other server. It could mean, um, having uh, an infrastructure set up to detect and monitor the environment so that in the event of a DR, you are quickly alerted, which in most cases you will be. So you're having infrastructure in place that will ensure that it supports the DR. Well, uh, I'm going to end right here. I appreciate everybody joining and everybody listening to this. DR is a very important core part of the business, and as IT, we have to ensure that that is protected and that it's securely um, um, protected. All right. Happy learning.